Welcome to 50 Plus in Montgomery County, a program that is a voice for many produced by the Commission on Aging, of which I am a community member. While the show is insightful for people of all ages, each episode takes a fresh look at important issues by spotlighting older adults in the community, representatives of services and programs, and activities of interest to older adults. My name is Katie. As many of you know, February is dedicated as Black History Month. Today, our discussion will focus on the rich African American experience and heritage in Montgomery County. This month also marks the 20th anniversary of the village. So before we get into it, our discussion, we will hear brief remarks from Pazit Aviv from the Montgomery County Aging and Disability Services. Hi, Pazit.
Hi, Katie.
Pazit, villages across the country, including in Montgomery County, will celebrate the founding of the nationwide village movement. Briefly tell us what they are and share more about the historical trajectory and the accomplishments of the last 20 years.
The village movement began in the neighborhood of Beacon Hill in Massachusetts when a group of older adults came together to form their own community organization. They recognized the significant gap in what's out there available for people who wanted to age at home with high quality of life. And one of the primary needs they identified is the social networks that they were missing. So they decided to reweave those local social fabric of community for themselves, and were so successful that people from all over the country began calling them to ask how they did that and what were their successes and good ways to accomplish this very incredibly important goal. So from that time, 20 years ago until now, we have formed over 300 community organizations in the nation. 30 of them are actually in our own very backyard in Montgomery County. We started in 2009 with the first few villages of Burning Tree and Bannockburn and Chevy Chase at home, and since then have grown tremendously, not just in localities, but also in size, in diversity, in the kind of things villages do. So it's been quite a rich experience to all of us. Just to give you a flavor, we did this little collective impact survey with 15 villages, those who had the time and presence of mind to share their data. And in the past 12-month reported period, we have documented 32,528 volunteer hours across just 15 villages. And villages served 9,000 different service requests. There were 22,000 people who participated in around 2,000 different events, and that's even during COVID. So it's a very robust local movement and has a lot to contribute. And that's it. And if you want to hear more, we have more in store for you.
Well, Pazit, before you depart, we're also celebrating Black History Month in February. I'm curious, are there any diversity, equity, and inclusion work being done in the village movement?
Yes, the villages are very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially in the past few years. And we're looking into different ways the villages can become more accessible, more inclusive. We have work groups that focus on that. And we also have particular neighborhoods that are very diverse and also have their own villages. And so I would be happy to share their experiences and also invite them to come and participate in this show.
See, that is good to hear. Thank you so much for the brief overview. We'll have to have you back on next month for a more in-depth conversation. Thanks for taking the time today.
You're very welcome, and thanks for having me on.
Up next, we'll talk with Cameron Walpole, who is the Education Program Manager for the Woodlawn Manor Cultural Park and the Underground Railroad Experience Trail.
Senior Call Check is Maryland's free service providing an automated daily check-in call for residents 65 and older. Senior Call Check makes an automated call every day, and if there is no response, follows up to ensure that you or your loved one is okay. Call 1-866-50-CHECK or register online at aging.maryland.gov.
The Equal Justice Initiative has documented nearly 6,500 racial terror lynchings in the United States between 1865 and 1950. At least 41 of those lynchings took place in Maryland, and 3 right here in Montgomery County. The Montgomery County Lynching Memorial Project, in collaboration with the Montgomery County Public Libraries, invites you to the exhibit, It Happened in Rockville, Remembering 2 Lynchings. The exhibit is open at the Rockville Memorial Library during the month of February.
Welcome back to 50 Plus in Montgomery County. Here to talk about the Underground Railroad experience in Maryland, specifically the Woodlawn Manor Cultural Park, is Cameron at Walpole. Cameron, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad you're on. You know, Cameron, the National Park Service created the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom to commemorate the places and people who shaped the journey to freedom here in Maryland. Now, tell us about the Woodlawn Manor Cultural Park.
Absolutely. So Woodlawn Manor Cultural Park is part of the Network to Freedom program. Woodlawn Manor is one of the parks in the Montgomery Park system. It's located in Sandy Spring, Maryland, which was home to both Quaker communities and free Black communities. So in addition to the historic area, which includes the Woodlawn Manor House, the historic stone barn where our Woodlawn Museum is, several outbuildings, and the visitor center, Woodlawn Manor is also home to the Underground Railroad Experience Trail, which helps us tell the stories of the brave men, women, and children in Montgomery County who escaped to freedom on the Underground Railroad.
Now, you said there's an historic site where the 1832 barn is. What's the story of the lives of the Woodlawn residents and enslaved laborers?
Sure. So we interpret the stories of the Palmer family. So Dr. William Palmer was a Quaker. He was a farmer and a country doctor who moved to Maryland from Pennsylvania. He purchased Woodlawn Manor in 1822, but unfortunately his first wife passed away due to complications from childbirth. He did remarry. He married a woman by the name of Cleora Duval, but she was not a Quaker. So she brought in a lot of new ideas and a lot of differences. So one thing was that she brought enslaved laborers to Woodlawn. Now, the Quakers had done away with slavery. They'd freed the people that they enslaved in the late 1700s. So this was kind of a point of contention. So Dr. William Palmer was actually read out of meeting or disowned from the Sandy Spring Religious Society of Friends. And we know that by 1860, the Palmer family was enslaving at least 13 people at Woodlawn. And outside of the labor that they performed, we really don't know a whole lot about their lives. But every opportunity we get, we do want to say the names of some of the people who were enslaved there, the ones that we do have the names of. So some of them were John, George, Allie, Nace, his wife Mary Henry, and her children Mary, Lucy, Nace, and Henry.
Cameron, you mentioned the Underground Railroad Experience Trail. What is it and why was it created?
So the Underground Railroad Experience Trail was actually created in 1998 by Montgomery Parks. It was originally called the Rural Legacy Trail, and it was created to help us preserve green space in Montgomery County and help us tell the stories of Montgomery Countyans and the people in Sandy Spring area. It is part of the Rachel Carson Greenway and the National Park Service's Network to Freedom program. While the trail is not historic, we use it as a tool to help us understand what the experience might have been like for the freedom seekers who were escaping through the woods of Montgomery County. So the trail it's an out and back trail. It's a natural surface trail, and it's about 2 miles out and 2 miles back. And one of the cool things is if you leave from Woodlawn Manor and walk along the trail, you can actually make it all the way to the actual Sandy Spring.
Can you also describe the historical significance of the local free Black communities and the Quaker experience in Montgomery County?
Sure. So the Sandy Spring Religious Society of Friends was established in the 1720s. They started eventually believing in bearing faithful testimony against the institution of slavery in the 1790s. So the people that they freed, they enslaved people, but then they freed them. They developed their own strong community there in Sandy Springs. So that free Black community became a vital part, or became vital to the people who were escaping to freedom. Freedom seekers could actually kind of hide in plain sight in Sandy Spring and the free Black communities as they were making their way to Pennsylvania or to other points north. So there was actually a lot of Underground Railroad activity in the Sandy Spring area because of its proximity to Washington, D.C.
Now, what sort of programs do you offer, and are there any upcoming events?
Yes, so right now, if visitors were to come to Woodlawn Manor, they could actually pick up a trail map. It's right outside of our visitor center. We have trail maps available year-round, and people can take self-guided tours on the hikes on the Underground Railroad Experience Trail. On February 19th, we are hosting a Black History Month Family Day. It is from 10 to 1. It's a drop-in event, grab-and-go event, so it's super safe for COVID. Our visitor center will be open 10 to 1. Families can come up, grab some take-home activities for kids, pick up a trail map, and head out on the trail for a self-guided hike. So it's a great opportunity for families to get together, learn about local Black history, and get some exercise at the same time. So yeah, we will be opening back up in the spring. And when we do that, we will offer guided hikes of the trail. And our Woodlawn Museum in the Stone Barn will be open. And that's a great opportunity to come and learn about the Underground Railroad, about the Quaker communities, free Black communities in the area, and agriculture. So we actually see a lot of visitors who are coming in groups, and you can learn more about our group tours and guided hikes at woodlawnmanor.org.
Wow, Cameron, what an informative and educational conversation. And thank you for your commitment to coordinating the preservation and education efforts of this Underground Railroad site. Is there anything else you want to share about the journey to freedom in Maryland, considering it's Black History Month?
Absolutely. So on the Underground Railroad Experience Trail Hike, we really focus on individual stories of real Montgomery Countyans who sacrificed everything for a shot at freedom. So Black History Month is a really great opportunity, great time for us to learn about some of our local heroes, people like Anne Maria Weems, the Edmondson sisters, and Josiah Henson. So I would just encourage everyone to visit one of our local historic sites in Montgomery Parks. You can learn more about all of our sites in Montgomery Parks at historyintheparks.org.
Cameron, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Up next, we will talk with Mark Thorne, who is the Historic Site Manager for the Josiah Hansen Museum and Park.
I was definitely hesitant about getting the vaccine, so did some research to get the information I needed about how the vaccine works.
Before that, I assumed if I washed my hands, wore my mask, kept 6 feet of distance, I was safe. But when I moved to care for my 75-year-old mother, I couldn't help wondering, what if I pass it to her without knowing? Then what?
Knowing that African Americans are dying from COVID-19 3 times more than their white counterparts, that inspired me to get vaccinated. And in Montgomery County, Maryland, there are many vaccination sites, even one at my church, which made it pretty easy.
Once I was informed, I knew getting vaccinated was the best thing for my health, my loved ones, and my community.
Get educated.
Get tested.
Get vaccinated.
Get back to living.
Welcome back to 50 Plus in Montgomery County. The Josiah Hansen Museum and Park tells the story about the life and challenges of Reverend Josiah Henson, enslavement in Maryland, and the ongoing struggles of racial equity and justice. Here to share more is Mark Thorne. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Katie, how are you today?
I'm well. What about yourself?
I'm excited to talk about my museum.
Well, let's get right into it. Mark, tell us about the museum and park.
Well, so Josiah Henson Museum and Park is located here in North Bethesda, right on Old Georgetown Road. And what's amazing, it's a piece of history, national, local, and international history right here on Old Georgetown Road. And as you mentioned, the museum's mission is to tell about the life and struggles and challenges of Reverend Josiah Henson, his quest for freedom, enslavement here in Maryland, as well as the ongoing struggle for racial equity and justice. So we're excited to have our museum here and to be able to carry that mission to our community.
Mark, it's my understanding that the museum is a former plantation property of Isaac Riley, where Reverend Josiah Henson was enslaved. Are the descendants of both families still active with the museum?
Well, great point. So the Josiah Henson Museum and Park is located on the site of the actual Raleigh plantation. So right now, our museum sits on about 4 acres of the 560 that was held by Isaac Riley when Josiah Henson came here. Now, 560 acres, that's about 423 football fields. So it was a rather significant plantation here. So this is where Josiah Henson was enslaved, and we were lucky to purchase this property back in 2006. So we started the development of our museum, started doing programming, opened it up to the public, and one of the things that we developed was an advisory board on how we should tell the story to the community. And that advisory board consists of both descendants of both Isaac Riley, the gentleman that owned the plantation, and Josiah Henson. So both descendants from both sides of the story, rather, come together to help us decide how we would interpret and then tell the story to the community and in our museum.
Mark, can you share more about the life of Reverend Josiah Henson? He really was an extraordinary person who did some extraordinary acts.
Yeah, his story just inspires me so much. So Josiah Henson was born into slavery in Southern Maryland, in Port Tobacco in Charles County. And as a child, he was sickly, and he only was reunited with his mother because they thought that he was a wasted investment, right? They thought he was a wasted investment, so they reunited him with his mother here on this plantation with the hope that he would survive. Well, not only did he survive, he was able to strive here on this plantation. He was able to assume a position that very few enslaved had, and that was that as an overseer. So he actually ran the plantation pretty much for the owner. So after years of running the plantation here, he was given a task of transporting enslaved laborers to Kentucky. And when he did so, he ended up staying in Kentucky for a while, where he eventually escaped from. Now you'll say, well, that sounds like an interesting story, but it was just the beginning of the story of Josiah Henson. Josiah Henson escaped, made his way to Canada, and established the Thorne settlement, which essentially became a trade school for those that escaped for freedom to Canada, and they learned to trade. In addition to that, he came back and freed 118 enslaved laborers on the Underground Railroad. And you would think that was the end of the story, but it kept going. He ended up writing a book, a narrative of his life, which was read by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Now, Harriet Beecher Stowe read that story, was inspired, and then she wrote her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Josiah Henson essentially became known as the real Uncle Tom, and went on to fame, meeting the Queen of England, going to visit the president in the White House, and having this extraordinary life from a wasted investment to a man that has made a long legacy here, not just in the United States, but in Canada as well.
Wow, it sounds like he really had impact around the world. Now, you mentioned that the property was purchased in 2006, and I'm assuming by Montgomery County. So, that's definitely a great impact that's having. But tell us a little bit more about that history and what that means for Montgomery County.
So when we purchased the property in 2006, one of the things that we did is we started doing archaeology right away. So archaeology is great because it tells the story about the past. We started doing archaeology on our site. We've had over 100 volunteer archaeologists work alongside of our staff archaeologists. And we've discovered over 40,000 items that help to tell the story about life on this plantation and how people survived here, right? So that history is important. And Montgomery County has not only set aside the site, but they've committed time. They've committed the energy and the resources to make this museum and this site significant. Archaeology is one of the things that we started in 2006, and we will continue to do that here on our site moving forward. We are going to be installing an outdoor archaeology classroom so that school groups and other groups can come and do archaeology and find out a little bit about archaeology here on our site. History tells the story of the past, but that informs the future. And that's what we want to do here at Josiah Henson Museum and Park.
I like that. That's a tweetable moment. History tells the story of the past, but also tells us about the future. Now, what can we expect with a visit to the museum?
So when you come to the museum, you're coming to our visitor center, which is a brand new construction. And you're stop at our front desk, check in. Most of our patrons right now purchase their admission online, but you can come and purchase admission here at our front desk. You can buy a book if you choose at our gift shop. But everyone's visit to the museum starts off with a 12-minute orientation film in our theater. After the orientation film, you'll then be able to explore the grounds where you can find out more about life on the plantation. You can look at some of the features to the grounds, and then you can go inside of our historic house, the Raleigh Bolton house. Now, the Raleighs constructed the oldest part of the house around 1800, and there was addition to the house in 1939. And that's where we have our exhibits. And one of the things that's exciting about our exhibits is we use a type of art technique called graphic novel. Now, a lot of people say graphic novel, that's for a younger age group. But what we thought when we developed our exhibits was to create an intergenerational experience. We have artifacts from the past that connects to some of our more experienced visitors. And then we have our graphic novels that will connect to our young visitors. So after experience the exhibits and the multimedia presentations inside of the museum, you can then make your way around the grounds and enter into the log kitchen. Now, for many years, our local neighbors would consider that or call that Uncle Tom's cabin. But we know two things. First of all, Uncle Tom was fictional. And secondly, it's not a log cabin, it's actually a log kitchen. And that is one of our features where we actually show some of the archaeological work in progress. And it also has multimedia presentations inside as well.
Mark, I was able to visit the museum and park on Sunday afternoon as one of those experienced visitors and had a real teachable, moment, immersing myself in more than 2 centuries of history and culture. And I definitely have you to thank for that and being such a great guide. So before we close, I want to ask you about your reflection. Visitors will note that upon concluding the tour at the Josiah Henson Museum and Park, guests are asked to give your reflection about their experience. So I'm going to turn the tables on you right now, Mark, and ask you, how do you plan to make an impact for the future?
Well, first of all, I can tell you, I enjoyed your visit more than you enjoyed visiting with me. As you can see, I'm a big kid and I enjoy telling this story. So one of the things that is important to me is a quote from Josiah Henson. When he freed himself, he said, when he touched free land for the first time in Canada, he said, I will use my freedom well, right? And that's one of the things that has resonated with me. You look at his life, there were times when he made decisions where his faith was his compass, right? And the decisions he made helped him along with his journey. So when my reflection is, while there might be struggles and challenges in your life, those mistakes, those things that you might think were bumps in the road were actually keeping you on the road to where you needed to go. So my reflection is, don't give up, stay focused, because mistakes end up being the right call. Josiah went from, I would say the expression often is rags to riches, but he went from being someone that they thought was a castaway, a cast off, to a man that made a major impact. So I think that not giving up, perseverance, those are the lessons that come out of my experience here. And I want to share that with everyone that comes here.
Mark, do you have any upcoming events happening?
Thanks for asking, Katie. We have two programs coming up in February for Black History Month. One is on Saturday, February the 12th, and it's Cooking with History. So we look at foodways and archaeology and the impact that archaeologists and the African-American experience have kind of converged into what we know today as cooking or the culinary arts here in our county and the rest of the country. And that's going to be exciting with both archaeologists and experts in foodways. The second program is Meeting of the Minds, which is a very unique program where we're partnering with the Harriet Tubman Center and the Frederick Douglass Historic Site, where we're going to have a virtual conversation between Josiah Henson, Harriet Tubman, and Frederick Douglass. We have historical reenactors that will portray those three, and we will have an imaginary Zoom call between three of these titans of history or African-American history here in Maryland. That's on Saturday, February the 26th. You can register for both of them or check them out on our website, josiahhenson.org.
Well, I think as we take time to celebrate Black History Month, that's something that we should all, do. Make sure that we don't give up, no matter your skin color, and that we all persevere, because on the other side of that, there's a major impact that we can make in our communities. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me, Mark.
Katie, it's been my pleasure.
Well, that concludes our program for today on Montgomery County's African American Heritage Experience and the roundup on the 20th anniversary of the foundation of the Village Movement. As you can see, the voices of those 50 plus matter every day and in every way. To learn more about services for seniors in Montgomery County, please visit the Montgomery County Seniors website by visiting montgomerycountymd.gov/senior or call the Senior Resources Line at 240-777-3000. And as always, thanks for watching 50 Plus in Montgomery County. Happy Black History Month.
Ride on Flex, Montgomery County Department of Transportation's on-demand transit service to help you get around in defined Rockville and Glenmont-Wheaton zones. There are no fixed stops or schedules. Just use the Ride on Flex app or call 240-301-3842 to book your ride. Curb-to-curb service is available for people with disabilities. Standard ride-on fare policy applies. Visit rideonflex.com for service areas and hours of operation.